Let's bring in roll call columnist Jon Allen. He is the author of the upcoming book, Shattered, Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign. Good to have you.
Good to be here.
So, Jon, let's start talking about this. The news surrounding the White House and Sally Yates, what do you make of the way the administration is responding to the allegations, the letters that have been put out there?
I think it's unusual behavior that sort of models a pattern that we've seen before, where the White House says something that is immediately disproven by the facts. I think this is a particular situation where risking credibility is a problem, because I think there is a real desire among the American public to know whether or not there was collusion going on between the Trump campaign and Russia. It's very clear that Russia was trying to interfere with the election. It is very clear that they were egged on, publicly at least, by Donald Trump a little bit, and maybe by Roger Stone. But I think the public wants to know, and probably has a right to know, what was going on behind the scenes, if there was anything going on behind the scenes. And what this does is it reduces the administration's ability to make its case in the future every time that there's something they say that turns out to not be credible, like they didn't tell Sally Yates not to testify. They clearly did tell Sally Yates not to testify from the Justice Department, and then ultimately by the White House not giving her the permission that the Justice Department said she needed.
You agree with the calls for Devin Nunes to step down, recuse himself from the investigation, but you go one step further. You think he should remove himself from the Intel Committee as well. I
do. I think that he went out and gave a press conference in which he talked about information that should have been classified, and that as a member of the Intelligence Committee, somebody who has access to that kind of information, to go out and talk about that so publicly, I think that's a problem. And I think if you were the intelligence agencies, you would think twice about what information you're giving him, which then reduces the ability of that oversight committee to have oversight over the administration. What you've got here is kind of a reversal of the separation of powers, where Chairman Nunes at least appears right now to be protecting the president rather than overseeing him, as our founders would have liked members of Congress to do with regard to administration. So in addition to that, I think from a political standpoint, he also, going back to this credibility issue, has not only lost credibility in terms of Democrats calling for him to lose his job or to give up this particular investigation. Republicans now are worried that his findings won't have credibility, and that even if he's able to clear President Trump, and even if that's legitimate, it won't be believed by a lot of the public because of all the shenanigans.
All right. You say that the majority of the American people want to know what happened in the 2016 election, but from the standpoint of President Trump and his associates in the administration, clearly there's a sense that, look, even if we agree, as John McCain yesterday said to us, that he had hoped that the president would at least acknowledge that the Russians attempted to interfere in our elections, that they did not succeed, but attempted to do so, that puts President Trump in a situation where he has to defend the legitimacy of his presidency. In his mind, it may not be that that's true, but he might think, look, if I acknowledge that this happened, then people are going to say I'm not the legitimate president of the United States, even if the Russians are proven to not have actually tampered in the election.
And doesn't that say so much about the lack of confidence that people will see him as a legitimate president if he admits what is obvious to everyone else, that the Russians made an attempt to interfere in our election, as they make attempts, sometimes very successful, to interfere in elections of other countries? This is a long-running national security issue for the United States. The Russians have succeeded in that they've divided us over the question of whether they're tampering with our elections, and to the extent that they got the president that they wanted, that was successful too. What nobody has shown is that the voting was changed by that, and frankly, we knew about a lot of these issues before the campaign, before the end of the campaign. So people went into the voting booth knowing that there were allegations that the Russians were behind these leaks, and in fact, a finding by the intelligence community that they had done the DNC leaks. So, it's not like voters were completely unaware of this.
All right. Can we talk a little bit about health care? The president spoke at a reception yesterday. There were senators and their families, and he commented a little bit about the fight on health care. Let's listen to it, and then we'll talk.
I know that we're all going to make a deal on health care. That's such an easy one. So I have no doubt that that's going to happen very quickly. I think it will, actually. I think it's going to happen, because we've all been promising, Democrat, Republican, we've all been promising that to the American people. So I think a lot of good things are going to happen there. We'll talk.
Such an easy one. Then why didn't it happen?
So easy, like colonizing Mars.
Right, right.
Should be really simple. Just get Elon Musk $1 billion and you're good to go.
So this is a little bit of a departure, because right after they yanked the bill, it was the Democrats, they wouldn't even talk to us about this, and then it was, no, it was more conservative members of the Republican Party, they're, responsible for this. Now he seems to be a little laid back. Oh, easy peasy, we'll get around to it. What do you think the future of this health care reform is going to be?
I think it's going to be very difficult. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell yesterday came out and threw cold water on the idea that they were going to do a health care bill. The senators were very happy to not have to vote on it. Many of them were trashing the bill behind the scenes on Capitol Hill, going over to the House and firing up the House conservatives to get them to be against it, because these members didn't want to vote for it. I mean, it was they were sort of put between what they had campaigned on to their very conservative base about repealing Obamacare, which this wouldn't do, and taking away benefits from their voters, a lot of whom are more moderate than that super conservative set. None of it looked good to them. The Senate was tampering with the House, speaking of tampering. And so, I don't see a clear path forward for this bill. The House is going to try to send it to the Senate and create some pressure, and they may do some things to it that wouldn't comply with Senate rules, just so that the Senate will then feel the pressure to take up their own bill. So it's just a matter right now of which Republicans are going to get blamed.
How do you think John Boehner feels right now? I mean, he famously said that it was really hard. I'm paraphrasing here, but it was really hard for Republicans to agree on health care. It's proving. I mean, do you think he has any sympathy for Paul Ryan?
No, I think he.
No.
No, I'm sure he has some sympathy for Paul Ryan, but I think he feels like. I think he feels like having a cigarette.
I bet. And hitting the golf course.
Right, hitting the golf course. Because, I mean, his point was that, look, Republicans have never been able to agree on how to do health care in this country.
Well, and
in fact, the Congress.
Well, ultimately, it's antithetical in a lot of ways to the Republican orthodoxy. Like, do they really want to provide a huge health insurance benefit? As Paul Ryan explained a little bit awkwardly in front of a big whiteboard the other day, for more people to get health insurance, people who have insurance are going to have to give something. They're going to have to give up some of their money. They're going to have to give up other things. That basically, if you're in a risk pool, the people who are younger and healthier do worse, and the people who are older and sicker do better. Which is kind of also how government works more largely. That the haves end up pulling along the have-nots a little bit.
Right.
All right. To be continued, Jon Allen. As always, we appreciate it, my friend.
My pleasure. Take care.